Hello, hello, my fellow geeks. This is the Indian AvGeek, and I'm Vishal Mehra. We spoke to Ameya for our first guest episode, focusing that time on the blue and hot Indigo and the red and cold SpiceJet. Fast forward 9 weeks, and the cold is turning warm and amber in a good way. Over the past week or so, SpiceJet has got a lifeline with a 3,000 crore share sale to institutional investors. About 87 Indian and international institutions have subscribed to the issue. Shares were issued at rupees 61.60 per piece. Top investors included Autumn, Goldman Sachs, and Tata Mutual Fund. Interesting to note that roughly 3 weeks back, Carlyle Aviation Partners had agreed to convert SpiceJet's debt into equity at rupees 100 per share. And to discuss all of that and more, we have Ameya Joshi, also known as Khabri Lal on X, with us. Well known name in Indian aviation, he has worked with airlines like Kingfisher, Go Air, and AirAsia in the past and has tracked Indian aviation for nearly 2 decades now. His inputs have made it to the National Civil Aviation Policy of 2016 as well. That's a long list of achievements, Ameya, and now you're the first guest of the Indian App Geek that I have the privilege of saying, welcome back.
Thanks a lot for having me here again. And it was a privilege to be on the first episode and again now. And I've seen this podcast go from strength to strength in very few episodes. So, congratulations. I wish you all the luck and especially the listeners who have become hooked onto this and have some very positive reviews and some very constructive suggestions. So, for the aviation ecosystem in India, I think it's a good step forward and congratulations for leading it.
This is absolutely a shared success, Ameya. Folks like you and other brilliant people I've had the pleasure of hosting. All right, back to the matter at hand. I think by now all of us should be in agreement that SpiceJet should be rebranded as PhoenixJet, right?
You have a point.
So, can you give our listeners a brief lowdown on what has happened in the financial life of SpiceJet over the past week? I remember we were discussing a QIP on the very first episode 9 weeks back, and it seems, at least on paper, that it has been a successful raise.
Absolutely. 3,000 crores is not a joke, and SpiceJet has said that it has successfully raised it. Not just raised it, no, they did raise some money in the last tranche as well, but the names were not known. What makes it very interesting this time is the names include the likes of Goldman Sachs or Tata Mutual Funds. So you have a lot of big names who have decided to invest, and there has to be some reason into it, which is probably not as obvious to app geeks like us, but something beyond that which makes people invest as much, especially in an airline at a time when it was down to just about 20 planes, flights were delayed. There was chaos at the airports, and it had planes sitting on ground. And in its QIP document itself, the airline talked about not having money to get them up and running. So there is something more that all of us missed, but there are people who are seeing.
My next question was going to be exactly that, Ameya. What do you think these top mutual funds, these, well-known investors would have seen in a weak SpiceJet? What do they see in the airline?
Yeah, I think, if you ask me, this was lower than 2014 for the airline. Yes, in 2014, it did come to a halt almost for an entire day. This time it did not, but in terms of a new low, this was the low for me. It had more accumulated losses. It has, more negative net worth than it did in 2014. But then, of course, what did others see? The market in 2014 was very different than what it is today. Now you have regular complaints from passengers which talk about on time not being the case with the major airlines anymore, including Indigo, which always talked about on time. A lot of flights are delayed. The market being nearly 90% between the Tata Group of Airlines and Indigo. So there is a need to have choices. Now, any country, wherever there is some sort of semblance and you have somebody who is giving that small fight or willing to offer a choice, typically sees green shoots. And I think that is what the mutual funds or large investment houses have seen in SpiceJet, that there is opportunity. The market is growing. So the basic thing is that the market is growing and it's growing in a healthy, successful manner. There are large orders which are placed by two airline groups and also Akasa Air for that matter. So there remains a demand for somebody who can give a good, clean, on time operation as an option to passengers, and passengers would be willing to move to SpiceJet, for example. The other thing which could be attractive is that SpiceJet, even though through all these problems, has always had a RASK which is higher than competition. And earlier it was because of a lot of monopoly routes. Later it was a mix of Udan and monopoly routes. But they've consistently pushed themselves on two counts. One is a higher RASK, and the other is load factors. So if you look at it holistically, these are the green shoots which possibly the fund houses have seen before deciding to invest as much.
For the uninitiated, RASK, by the way, stands for Revenue per Available Seat Kilometer. It's a true measure of efficiency in operations of an airline. Ameya, do you see a time when Ajay Singh is not in the driver's seat or rather the captain's seat at SpiceJet anymore?
Difficult right now. Again, never say never, but like it or not, he has been the one who has got the airline inside this and also out of this and multiple times. So diluting the stake, yes, but he has not had really a CEO who is different than him and taking all the the operational burden and working around. So he's been hands on, and then imagining him taking a back seat, being a board member, a MD, or something on those lines, and having somebody else run it looks very difficult, at least in near future. So, 5 years down the line, we don't know how the industry would be, what SpiceJet goes through. However, in immediate future, I think that's not a possibility.
Right. There is something going on at Southwest in US as well as we speak. Elliot has forced some changes in the airline there in terms of management, in terms of business plan. Nonetheless, coming back to SpiceJet, from an Indian passenger point of view, especially on the domestic sector, this is an encouraging development to ward off the duopoly.
Absolutely, it is. Assuming that SpiceJet can get a lot of planes operational. I mean, I saw comments about 100 planes being in the fleet by 2026. Personally, I find this target overly ambitious, but at least getting their own 36 grounded planes up and running would take the fleet above 50, and that's a good number to have in Indian skies, where you can make the most of the good routes and ensure that you give option to passengers. So it is something to look forward to. And I think in the next 2 to 3 quarters, assuming that the funds are properly used, we could see all of its fleet being operational and, of course, plans for inducting the new ones.
Yeah, and with 50 aircraft operational, you can also easily see SpiceJet as being a stable number three player in the industry, especially with Akasa's delayed arrival of Boeing jets. From that perspective, also this is an opportunity again for SpiceJet to become a number three player because I'm assuming a scenario where there were no issues with Boeing and Akasa had a steady supply of planes, then this would have been an even bigger problem. But I guess that could be one of the things that those investors we were talking about earlier would have seen as far as the industry scenario is concerned. Maybe. How do you think
Definitely.
airline? Yeah. How do you think the airline plans to use those 3,000 crores that they have just raised through QIP? And I was also reading, by the way, there are some 750 crores that they are also getting on the side from an earlier raise now, right?
Right, absolutely. And I think they're using around 750 crores for settlement of liabilities, which keeps them on an even footing, not have any more dues, which are statutory. About 400 crores for ungrounding of planes, and they plan to invest another 3 to 400 crores in the new fleet. So that is something which their plan is. They still have about 600 crores which are not planned for any use, which are something which can be used for either fleet or investment on maybe a training organization, maybe MRO. We don't know. It's too small to have its own MRO, but no, you could look at multiple things. Ajay Singh and SpiceJet have both been very innovative. We saw that with Spice Express. Saw that with Praetors. They converted three of their Q400s, removing seats, using it during the COVID period for carrying cargo on seats as well. So they've been very innovative. So based on what time and the need is, they could come up with the really innovative ways to, get some revenue or in one form of another get that revenue. But I will go back to, a mix of this and the previous question. What makes it also interesting from a passenger perspective is that a lot of Q400s are grounded. Now, as part of their earlier settlement, Q400s, they now own a handful of them. I think eight, if I'm not wrong, they own them. So getting them up and running means you start your revenue with those planes and you don't pay lease for that. And that's a win-win situation because today you're paying lease for your grounded planes, right? And then you get into a
Right.
situation where you don't have planes which are grounded and you're not paying lease for it. So all the money that you make by operating those is actually your own money. Couple that with the routes which are under UDAN, which today it is bid one, not able to operate. And part B of that, which is future UDAN routes, which it will bid and win and operate. Now you get subsidized for flying planes on routes. The planes are yours. There is no lease rental, and you are making revenue and getting compensated by government for a particular number of seats. Now, this combination is actually a winning combination to ensure that it comes out from the well in which it has found itself in.
I'm reminded of what Aviation Minister Naidu said a couple of weeks back, that the country needs more airlines, not less. I think we can figure out that these 3,000 or 3,600 odd crores would be definitely enough, will be enough for the short term. But will all of this be enough for the medium term future of the airline to build for the long term?
Right, and that is where I keep giving my very famous example of running an airline is no different than having a loan for any other purpose. So you take a loan uh, because you're not making profits, and you think that you can make profits, and then you can make enough profits to ensure that you pay EMI of this loan and make some money. A little later, you realize that you are not making money, and now you also have to pay this EMI, which you are not able to pay. So you take another loan. Now, the next loan actually is used to pay the previous loan. And then you again hope that you will make more revenue so that you can pay two
It's a
EMIs.
vicious circle.
Yes. So when it reaches, three or four loans,
Yeah.
you are in a very, very difficult situation. So the only way out is to make money and be profitable. And can SpiceJet be profitable? That is what will lead us to an answer. How long will this 3,000 crore last? So for record, the airline in the last 12 quarters or 3 years since COVID started has lost a little over 4,000 crore. So this 3,000 crore new money which has come in is actually lesser than what it lost in the last 12 quarters. So medium, immediate term, great, green shoots. Medium term, making operational profit is the only solution for SpiceJet and for any other airline in India.
And you couple these 3,000 crores or 3,600 crores with the fact that inflation has gone up, the US dollar INR conversion is much, much more now, right? USD has escalated a lot.
Absolutely.
This all
Yes.
makes for a tougher business environment, although fuel is down, right? Although
Yes.
there are
Yes.
two strong players, the government is supporting you to be a third player, fourth player. But this is, Ajay Singh's position is not at all enviable. So Boeing strikes, right? There are Boeing strikes right now. There are supply chain issues. All of this pretty much ensures that all this optimistic talk, like you also mentioned, um, by Ajay Singh about 2026, um, will probably remain just talk. We don't see them getting 100 aircraft or getting to 100 aircraft. Very, very optimistic. What do you think should be SpiceJet's plan to be profitable?
Well, I would say SpiceJet's plan to be profitable would be to actually change its fleet. You are having part of max order which is there for which you haven't possibly paid the PDPs. You also have few max in the fleet which are grounded. You have the 737 NGs, you have the Q400. You are down to 20 operational planes and 36 more grounded, right? It makes sense right now to actually tie up with somebody who can give you a new type. The investment makes sense. And if that new type comes up with something like a very beneficial deal with the government, nothing like it. And I'm referring to one or two options on the table which the airline may have. I'm not aware. But is this the time to look at a smaller jet? Will Airbus be willing to deal with SpiceJet for its A220s, which it has not been able to break into Indian skies? Will Embraer be willing to deal with SpiceJet and offer that? Publicly, the Embraer CEO has talked about or hinted about a assembly line in India and many other things coming along. So is that the way forward? I don't know. I keep thinking about it. That can it do a fleet replacement completely and come up with a clean slate and get the backing of the government, get the freebies, because whenever a new type is introduced, which is not very popular in a region, you get a lot of freebies. The deals are very different than what it is to go and buy a new Max or a 320 Neo family plane today as a new airline. So it has to think differently. It cannot go ahead with this whole thinking of let me get Max, let me see if my order book is still valid, let me see when FAA releases more slots, so on and so forth. So it's much beyond the strike. There has to be a very different thought if I am SpiceJet, and I have absolutely no clue if they are thinking in that direction or if even OEMs are working with them actively. I would assume so far they wouldn't because of the financial situation. But does this 3,000 crore turn the tide? I would be keen to wait and watch.
Wow. See, this is the reason I absolutely love having you on, Ameya. Such fantastic left field thinking, which, very few people can even imagine. And this makes me even more curious about this situation because, you know, from my lens, if I'm looking at A220s, they certainly would have lesser capacity than your 737s. If I'm looking at Embraers, they're an expensive aircraft to usually operate. That's what we have seen. I know they call their aircraft profit hunter, but it's an expensive aircraft to operate. Maybe one of the reasons they haven't been able to break into the market. But um, for SpiceJet to have a new fleet type, are you thinking in complement to Q400s that they already own? Or are you thinking, selling the Q400s and then having those 220s or Embraers? And having 737s along with that?
Well, I wouldn't want to have multiple fleet types. SpiceJet was the first LCC in India which diversified from a single fleet type mentality to multiple types. Clearly, for Spice, it hasn't worked. It may have worked very well for Indigo, but for Spice, it hasn't. So it could possibly make sense to, get rid of all the types in its fleet and get towards a single jet. And I'll give you example of Air Baltic. Air Baltic was not very profitable. It was all over the place with its fleet. It had 737-500, 737-500 with winglets, and the Q400s. They signed up with the 220. Over a period of time, they got rid of all the other fleets, 220 being the only one. And I think last I checked, they have over 40 aircraft in their fleet, doing flights like connecting Dubai with Riga in Latvia. So they got that range, they got the one common fleet benefits, so on and so forth. So with SpiceJet, it's a little different. The Q400, some of them are owned. Now, if you look at Q400, it's now not in production. So does it have a resale value, or do you want to use it all its life and then let go when its life is done? Would probably come up for discussion as and when these aircraft are operational and we have a different fleet type on the table. But uh, overall, it would make sense that it moves towards a single fleet type, whatever it may be. No, of course, not all Q400 because they fly a lot of international routes, and that's not what they would want to have. But maybe all 737s, all 320s, 220s, E2s, but the direction should be one. That will help them with the cost savings immensely.
A decade or so back, Mr. Al Bakr, the ex CEO of Qatar, was flirting with the SpiceJet, right? Now we all know he's seems, or rather the Qatar seems slightly more attached with Indigo now. Indigo is flying their 737 Doha sector. But do you see somebody like a, I don't know, a Middle East airline sweeping in and taking a sizable chunk in spice, and maybe that is the magic pill they are looking for, or that would help them, because it will certainly give them lots of rights, lots of airport slots, valuable airport slots in India, right?
Absolutely. So now we have to look at it on who can do it, right? And what the airline gets in return. When Etihad did it with Jet, they got the seats as a gift, and that was a very big gift. Uh, does this get replicated anywhere else? We don't know yet. So it would be a deal which needs to have blessings of the government. It would be a deal where the owners, the MD chairman has to agree on losing significant control, and a deal where the actual investing airline uh, gets benefits which are otherwise not going to be possible for a very long time. So in case of Etihad, when they invested, they got rights which were nearly equivalent to what Dubai had, which otherwise would have been impossible. Any other place that can do right now? At top of my mind, I cannot think of any airline who would want to do it at this point of time for any airline in India, leave aside SpiceJet, because the competition is such that you invest here and it's not going to work really well in terms of rights, considering how conservative we are for doling out rights right now. First. Second, the focus on having Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and other metros as the hubs, which government is clearly focusing on, pushing Indigo, Air India, giving them all the facilities that are needed, so on and so forth. So this is something which I would take with a pinch of salt, even if somebody goes and says that this is in the works.
Sure. Yeah. Which new routes do you think SpiceJet can or should open in the domestic and international sector? If I can make you wear the network planning hat for a bit.
Well, that's an interesting question. So they're holding, and this is as per their own admission, they're holding a lot of rights to Bangkok. They're holding rights to points in Saudi Arabia, and of course to places in Central Asia, Afghanistan, Iraq, and so on and so forth. But currently, I think it's the time of Indians going abroad. If you look at the international traffic right now, we have surpassed the pre-COVID times. However, the traffic is driven by Indians, and the foreign tourist arrivals are still lower than what they were pre-COVID. So what that means is that there are a lot of Indians who are traveling. And these Indians are traveling from not just metros, but tier two cities, which today are lacking connectivity. So if I am SpiceJet, I'm going to look at options to connect Bangkok with a lot of tier two cities in India with maybe a thrice a week operation or four times a week operation, which helps people go direct and helps people pay a little more to me for taking them direct, and not having them take a stop at one of the metros, and ensuring that I'm giving a wider coverage. These routes also become monopoly routes where I can charge a little more. So that is what I would look at when it comes to international operations. On the domestic, I've always seen SpiceJet to be more of a hit and run, make the most where you can. And then if you're hit by competition, they're happy to scale back, go somewhere else. And I've seen them do that on multiple sectors. Is it good or bad is probably a different question. But as long as you make money and you're not keeping passengers hanging, that's a good strategy to have. So, no more Q400s coming in. I would expect them to deploy them to places like Dharamshala, places like Chandigarh, Jaipur, all the tourist circuit from north, and similarly a lot of shuttle services in the south, where you see a lot of traffic between Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, typical short sectors. You don't need a 320 or a 737 for that, and you can have more frequency because these are more frequency driven markets than capacity driven markets. So this is the mix I would seek for what SpiceJet would look at.
Do you think they will be fighting with the CASA to get aircraft from Boeing?
I don't think the battle would be with Akasa per se, because my understanding is that Boeing hasn't really budgeted slots for SpiceJet right now. While Akasa does have some slots, and then Air India Express has the
Oh,
white
mostly.
tails with them.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have a case where you have to renegotiate and get the slots. Now a lot of things happen, right? For example, Akasa wouldn't have got its slot had it not been for Jet Airways going down. So the way SpiceJet slots were, they were probably remarketed to somebody else. So airlines keep adjusting plans. They keep going up and down with it. So slots are available. That's not an issue. Now, the real thing is how soon does the Boeing strike end? One. And second, how soon FAA allows Boeing to increase production, because that changes the game completely. And then what is the offer which Boeing is now going to place? So if you see when SpiceJet placed order, when Jet Airways placed order, there were only two Boeing carriers, so to say. Things are different today. Airbus still commands a large share in Indian narrow body market, but for Boeing, Air India Express is a much bigger, stronger airline to support than say a Spice or Akasa. Now, when you look at it from an OEM perspective, of course, they look at all airlines unequally. For them, the more important is the one which is more stable and will give repeat business. With Spice, they've had their own share of issues. There were news reports indicating that SpiceJet is going to get 777s. We none of us saw that. Again, this was not something which was made public by Boeing. So we don't know what exactly the relationship has been between the two airlines and what it would be going forward. So that needs to be sorted first before thinking of competing with slots for Akasa.
That makes me think about the next logical question, which is about ground crew, technicians, flight attendants. Do you foresee a talent crunch for the airline, considering their unfortunate reputation of late, especially as they look to scale up now?
I think it would be in certain areas, but not all. And there are reasons for it. One, we have a large churn of flight attendants which are trained and keep coming. And the training hours needed to become a flight attendant is much lesser than, say, a pilot or an AME. So that should not be an issue. However, when it comes to AME and pilots, no, definitely there could be an issue. Are people going to jump a stable ship and go there? Are they going to, really attract people from well-established airlines, so on and so forth? But let's look at it this way. Today, SpiceJet is going to look for talent from Air India Express and Akasa Air. At both these places, in recent past, there has been some or the other pilot turmoil. So we don't know how happy or sad people are at these two airlines as well. And if there is an assurance of, better salaries, on-time salaries, and growth, it could well be a place to jump.
What do you think is the importance of Spice Express now for the airline's future? Do you see a larger fleet for cargo?
Cargo market has changed drastically after resumption of regular air services. Now you see even Indigo, Pradhan Air got one plane but hasn't grown since then. Indigo hasn't grown with its cargo division. Likewise for SpiceJet, it's grounded. But the cargo division doesn't really depend only on the planes. They also handle the belly cargo which is there. So when you see the planes might be grounded, but Spice Express has still clocked some revenue. That revenue is coming from reselling the space which is part of SpiceJet's own belly. And it's more of a network of your own planes, somebody else's planes, uh, the ground service provider, somebody who is offering a fleet of trucks, so on and so forth. So as a company, it will continue very well. Will it add more aircraft? I think it's too early to tell. Going by how the market has reacted, especially on the cargo side, I don't think that has as much of a potential right now like it was during COVID. So COVID was a different ball game completely because you didn't have the scheduled services going on and cargo, coming going from all across the world, and especially that being the only air link, which is not the case anymore. So that I think is a little, something which may not grow the way the passenger fleet will come back.
Ameya, talking to you is always an education. And I love the learning I get after each recording with you. This is twice in a row now. And I cannot thank you enough for taking out the time and speaking to us. Thank you very much, Ameya.
Thanks a lot, Vishal, and good luck with the podcast. I hope it reaches new heights.
While I was post producing this episode, SpiceJet has indeed cleared long pending salaries of its employees, paid its GST dues, and hopefully will clear all other dues too to fly ahead. Our best wishes with them. Thank you to Ameya again and to you, dear listener. We are streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and all other major podcast apps. Do take out 30 seconds, rate us, and leave us a feedback. It helps. And with that, I wish you well and happy flying, my friends.